Okay, great. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AADOCR National Student Research Group Zoom seminar. I'm James Jang, and I'm currently the president of the National Student Research Group, NSRG. And one of the goals of the NSRG Leadership Board is to foster a supportive and collaborative network for students engaged in research. And we hope to encourage more students to pursue academic and research careers in our profession, and hope to expand the academic and research workforce to help address the dental faculty shortage. And therefore, we have been inviting guest speakers whom we believe they are some of the best role models. And we believe gaining good advice and guidance help us to be more ambitious and help us in continue pursuing rewarding and satisfying academic and research career path. So Dr. Tabak is currently the acting director of the National Institute of Health. He was a former principal deputy director of the National Institute of Health and former director of the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research. And he was the inaugural IADR Gold Medal recipient and IADR Distinguished Scientist Awardee in Salivary Research, and among other IADR awards. And like us, he was also a NSRG member as well. So prior to joining the NIH, Dr. Tabak was the Senior Associate Dean for Research and Professor of Dentistry and Biochemistry and Biophysics in the School of Medicine and Dentistry at the University of Rochester in New York. And he was a former NIH Merit recipient. And Dr. Tabak's major research focus has been on the structure, biosynthesis, and the function of glycoproteins. He continues to work in this area, maintaining an active research laboratory within the NIH intramural program, in addition to his administrative duties. So Dr. Tabak is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine, formerly IOM, of the National Academies, and he received his undergraduate degree from the City College of New York and his DDS from the Columbia University and a PhD from the University of Buffalo. So it is an extremely motivating news for students to see that the current leader of the American science and the leader of the world's largest research institute that has supported over 168 Nobel Prize winners in the country is a dentist, just like many of us. And he made time for us students despite his very busy schedule, and we're very thankful for his dedication to students. So now we're we'll move on to the questions and answers. So I divide our questions into two parts. First part is going to be questions related to Dr. Tabak's career path, and the second part is going to be about questions about students' career path. Some questions overlap one another, so I combine some of them. And some questions that we receive could be answered by our next Zoom Q&A session with NIH Director Dr. Rene de Souza and NIH Director of Extramural Programs, Dr. Lynn King. And also, if we have a couple minutes, if Dr. Tabak is okay, we can open for additional questions. And also during the session, if you can, please take notes or remember your favorite quotes from Dr. Tabak. And we will select some of these quotes and share them on our NSRG Instagram. And at the very end, right before we leave, we're going to take our Zoom screenshot selfie. Okay. All right. Now we're really on to questions about your career path. Okay. All right. So the first question that we received was, I would like to ask why he decided to join NIH after he built his career as a dental faculty. And I'm curious if his experience as a dental faculty helped him to join the NIH.
Yeah. Well, so I began my academic career at what's now known as the University of Buffalo. Back then it was the SUNY Buffalo. I finished my PhD there and I was invited to stay on the faculty. And enjoyed doing what I was doing. I was teaching endodontics. I was running a research lab. I was teaching biochemistry. But began to feel that my science was not advancing quite as rapidly as I wanted it to be, and felt that I needed to go to a place where I would not have quite the amount of teaching responsibility, because as a member of a clinical department back then, I had quite a bit of teaching responsibility. I was on the clinic floor 4.5 days a week, even though I had a career development award and I was only supposed to be on the clinic floor 1/2 day a week. But anyway, it's the way it worked out. And so the opportunity came up for me to join the University of Rochester, which is the School of Dentistry and Medicine. I like to say it's the best dental school in the country because there are no dental students. It's just postgraduate, and many people received their research training at Rochester over the years. In fact, almost any faculty you look at has somebody from Rochester. And so I went there and sort of rose through the ranks, associate and then full professor, and then became the senior associate dean for research there. And I'd still be in Rochester if not for two phone calls, one made by Dr. Ruth Kirstein, who was the then acting director of NIH, who invited me to apply for the directorship of NIDCR, and a phone call from Erwin Mandel, who was my longtime mentor at Columbia University, who said, I'll paraphrase, you've been on this sojourn in a school of medicine long enough, it's time to get back to dentistry. You need to go to NIH and take over the Dental Institute. And so fortunately, I was given that opportunity. Dr. Kirstein selected me for the position. And so I sort of started in dentistry, went to a school of medicine, and then came back to dentistry again. So what about that journey prepared me for what I did at NIH and continue to do? By the way, Zoom keeps going in and out for me. I'm not sure why, but I'm connected by phone. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Good. And so it taught me the need to do interdisciplinary work. If you think about it, as an endodontist, you are dependent upon the general dentist, the periodontist, the prosthodontist, and that sort of team play. You get used to doing things that way, and so I think being able to navigate, in multiple disciplines somewhat seamlessly, I think, was good preparation for what was to come later on in my career. Also, when you think about things clinically, the thought process is a little different than the ones that you use for a research project. You do develop a certain sense, if you will, and that sense about how you think a case will or will not evolve can put you in good standing as you figure out other types of problems, non-clinical problems. So I think those two things, were enormously valuable and continue to be valuable to me to this day.
All right. Thank you very much. I think you already answered the what inspired to continue research, unless you would like to add something else. But we can also go to the next question. Have you experienced what others consider to be the setback when you begin your academic career? And how did you craft that into a learning experience to forge ahead? And what has been the most challenging aspect of academic dentistry for you? And what have you found to be lacking in academic dentistry? It's a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, sure. The reason it's called research is because you always have setbacks. And I certainly, had my fair share, not only early in my career, but throughout my career. Particularly, getting scooped when you're just about ready to send a manuscript out and you see it appear in a journal, and that's exacerbated now with online publications. Things get out more quickly and so forth. So oh my, I have definitely experienced that multiple times. But what I've learned through that is to never give up and to appreciate that, my team and I can look at things in perhaps a somewhat different way than the next person, and can still, make some contribution, whether we're quote scooped or not. And again, that's happened to me a number of times. The other thing is, if you do work and nobody ever scoops you, you have to wonder, are you working in a field that's really interesting to anybody else but yourself? And so I look at being scooped as really a mark of working in fields that are exciting and interesting to many, many people. So I've always learned to trust my instinct, not to worry about what the next person is doing, and if for some reason I quote get scooped, take the lemons and make lemonade, so to speak. I think I think that's good advice for anybody, whether they're in research or clinical practice. I mean, you have to have an intrinsic trust in your own inherent ability and the ability of your team. Because no one individual, of course, has the answers to everything. Did I miss out on parts of that, James? I'm sorry. I did.
I think you cover all the questions. I think this is a really wonderful answer, so I really appreciate that. Actually, I'm like taking notes also right now. So yeah. So the next question was, so how do you currently balance your responsibilities between your administrative work and the current research with the NIH?
Poorly. So I will say it was always very challenging to balance work when I was the principal deputy. Since becoming the acting director, it's become even more challenging. The strategies that I've used really have been to keep the size of my group very small. So I never have more than 4 people in my lab. And it's not uncommon for me to have 3 or 4 people over the last decade or so. I strive for outstanding work and don't worry about quantity at all. If I publish one really good paper a year, I'm okay. I'm good with that. And I also enter into sort of long-term collaborations with different groups, and so we're able to work together on certain things. And if there's a circumstance where I just am not available, I can turn to my collaborative colleagues, and they can help pick up a little bit of the slack. But that, I recently had my board of scientific council review, which in the intramural program you reviewed every 4 years retrospectively, and one of the questions they ask is how many hours a week do you spend working in the lab if you have other responsibilities, e.g., clinical and/or administrative? And so I wrote that I spend roughly 10 hours a week on my research program, but I was not going to tell them what the denominator was. So, that's because to eke out 10 hours a week in a very, very full week is challenging. But I recruit people who are independently minded and who are secure enough to say I don't know when they don't know something. That may seem contrary, but in fact, the most secure people are the ones who can say I don't know. And that's the sort of phenotype that I have to have in my group, because I'm not around, and if somebody emails me or texts me and says, I really don't know how to do this, who should I talk to? I can connect them with whoever the expert is on the fly. And so it's worked out over the last 23 years here, and over the last sort of 15 or so years when I was in administration back in Rochester and Buffalo.
That's great. I really like your team science approach. So the next question, actually, this was asked by another student that I know, actually. So now that a new NIH director has been selected, what does your role look like during the transition of leadership?
Well, so the person, so I have to give you a little inside the Beltway explanation here. Dr. Bertagnolli has been nominated by the president to become the next NIH director. before she can become the next NIH director, she has to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. In order to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, she needs to meet with quite a number of senators, then has to have a confirmation hearing in the Senate Help Committee, which is our oversight committee, and then her nomination, assuming it gets out of committee, which I'm sure it will, then goes to the full Senate floor for their final vote. That all takes a long time. And so I have zero idea about when all that's going to occur. And until the Senate does their final vote, which again, I'm very confident they will, vote in favor of her. I remain the acting NIH director, and she remains the director of the NCI. And that's it, full stop. So really nothing has changed for me. When that all happens, when she is finally confirmed by the U.S. Senate, my intention will be to go back to my laboratory on a full-time basis for a year or two, not quite sure yet how long that will be. Because I have made the decision to step down from the principal deputy role. I think it's extremely important for the next generation of leaders to come in. I think it's very, very healthy for the organization to have that turnover of leadership. And as I've told Monica, the best thing I can do for her is get the heck out of her way. So I've done the job. I was a principal deputy for over 12 years, which is the longest anybody has ever done that job. And there's a reason why, people turn over. And I think, it would be very, very good for the organization, to be able to bring new leadership in around herself, and, so she can create her own team. I honestly don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm sort of in the process now of thinking about, trying to find a postdoc who might want to stay with me for a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, I don't have any immediate plans because I'm still very much in the having to run NIH mode. Once the transition occurs, I'll take a deep breath, maybe take a day off or so, and then, go to the lab and do lab stuff for the first time in, maybe 37, 38 years, because, most of the time I've been doing administrative stuff. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. This is another question. So, how are the future dental research prospects in US? I think this was from a student from overseas.
Well, I think the prospects for dental research are astonishing, because more and more mainstream science is finding its way into dental applications. And so if you think about it, I mean, you can go from A to Z. Amalgam, what's that? There's a whole new generation of restorative materials due to new chemical approaches to creating materials that, can restore, form and function. Dental caries, periodontal disease. We now are beginning to really understand the intimate details of the mechanisms that underlie these diseases. There's a beautiful paper that was just published by Michel Koo recently, and I think either Science Advances or Nature Communications, I don't remember which one, where he shows an organism sort of partners with strep mutans to make strep mutans more virulent. Just when we thought we knew everything we knew, there was to know about dental decay, Michel and his teams come up with this thing. It's Michel's team at Penn and another team at UNC. Beautiful, beautiful work. Periodontal disease, we've always thought it was immune dysregulation, and Nikki Moustopoulos and others, around the world have shown, how it's, fundamentally a T-cell defect. And, so I think the opportunity, regenerative medicine, what better place to work on the principles of regenerative medicine but the oral cavity. Exocrine gland function. The salivary gland is accessible. You can manipulate it with gene therapy. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. So I think the opportunities are just spectacular. And my prediction is over time, more and more non-oral health researchers will find their way to what has been traditionally, quote, dental research because of the incredible opportunities. You all have a leg up. You sort of got there first. So I think, you should really take advantage of these amazing, and there's so many more. I mean, I've just, touched the surface of this.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So for the specific opportunities at the NIH, we're gonna have that Zoom session with the Dr. Rene de Souza and Dr. Lane King. So I'll invite you.
Oh, that's great.
The opportunities. Yep.
That's great.
Yep. So next question was would you share your thoughts on how to distinguish ourselves as a future research group leaders in the craniofacial dental field? I think you already kind of answered this question, but if you want to add anything, yeah.
Well, what I tell the people in my own group is, know what good is. Look at the work from the absolute leading scientists in the world and aspire to do work that is as good as theirs. And it doesn't matter, what the field is. If the work strikes your interest, embrace it and figure out how to do your work as well. That's how you become a leader in your field. You don't become a leader in your field by publishing 500, sort of average papers. You become a leader in your field by publishing 20 really amazing papers. Quality is more important than quantity. There was a time we used to tease people that you'd weigh a curriculum vitae to see if the person was ready for tenure. And fortunately, we don't do that anymore. We now, tenure and promotion committees really look very, very hard at the quality of the work. And when grants are being reviewed, people look very hard at the quality of the work that was antecedent to the proposal. So just strive for excellence. That's the single most important thing. And whatever field of science you're in, there is somebody who is like the leader of that field. Why are they the leader? And strive to do things as well as they do.
Yep, this is a great answer. Yep, that's right. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the second part of our questions. So these are more like their students are seeking your advice. So these are questions related to students' career pathways. So the first question we received was, since my PhD research is quite basic, but after graduation, I would like to take a job as a dentist. In this case, I wonder, how can I connect basic research to the clinical treatment?
Well, don't force it. Okay, don't pound a round peg into a square, opening. As long as you are doing excellent work in both, you're going to be okay. Now, you can certainly find linkages as you learn more about your basic research and as you learn more about your clinical effort. But I wouldn't force it. I mean, I've studied glycosyltransferases for most of my career, and for a time I taught endodontics. And was there a relationship? Not really, but it sort of turned out okay. So I wouldn't force it. Let it occur naturally, because if you force it, you may compromise one or both of your activities. Now, if as a compromise your chair wants you to sort of direct some research that the graduate students or specialty students are doing, then you just have to carve out a little time for that service function. But if your heart's in doing the basic research, don't give it up. Now, if you want to give the basic research up and you want to do something that's more practical, again, who's the best person in the clinical research discipline that you're interested in, and just emulate him or her. And that's how you make the transition. Because if you know how to do basic research, you certainly have the capacity to learn how to do more translational research or clinical research. But just as you did for your PhD in basic research, you took some training. Don't be shy about taking some additional training, particularly if you wind up doing clinical research. Being a clinician and being able to do clinical research are true and related, but not identical. So just because you're an excellent clinician doesn't mean you're an excellent clinical researcher. So find out from a clinical researcher what the skill set that he or she has, and it's going to revolve around things like statistical design and so forth. But take advantage of your skills to broaden out or even switch fields if that's what you really want to do.
All right, thank you very much. So next question, I think this is coming from a pre-dental applicant who is applying to the dual degree programs. So the question is about what role did a DDS or DMD PhD play in your career, and how do you know you wanted to pursue both? And going back, what is one piece of advice you will give to yourself in the application process and during your education?
So I did my degrees in sequence. I received my dental degree first, and then I went off to do my PhD. And for me, that was the right approach. I found clinical dentistry to be extremely challenging. The basic science, was not a problem. I was, pretty facile at that. But when it came to the clinical work, I really found it very, very challenging. And there was no way in the world I could have done both programs together. Now, that's just me, okay? So you sort of have to know yourself, okay? Now, while I was a dental student, I was very fortunate to work with Erwin Mandel, and I actually also worked with somebody named Danny Fine. And as a dental student, I don't remember exactly, I think I published like 5 or 6 papers. So when it came time for me to graduate, they didn't know whether to give me tenure, throw me out of the school because I was a lousy clinician, or just give me a degree to get rid of me. Fortunately, they chose the last option. They just gave me the degree to get rid of me. And so I went off to Buffalo to do my PhD. And I learned a tremendous amount of biology and clinical relevance working with Erwin and Dan Fine. And I learned a lot about basic research getting my PhD with a fellow named Mike Levine at Buffalo. So that the combination of those two things, understanding the biological relevance and importance of things, and to be able to put the basic science findings into some biological context, I needed both parts of that in order to ultimately, do some of the things that I was able to do.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. This is a question coming from a PhD student, and I think you partly answered this, but maybe this answer could be more focused on the PhD students. So how PhD could help, actually, it is a dentist, actually, sorry about that. Let me just read the question, sorry. So how PhD could help dentists to become a faculty in the future, and what skills PhD students need to develop for pursuing academic careers, and what are the important skills I need to learn to be an efficient medical researchers, and how do I learn them?
Well, part of it is you learn by emulation. Pick the people who you really respect what they do, their work, and sort of try and do what they do. Okay. Keep quality control. For the same reason that you have quality control in the work that you do clinically, you do not want to do any substandard work for your patient. You don't want to do any substandard work for your research, regardless of what the discipline of your research is. Think about how to communicate what you do to a fifth grade audience. Because most of the time when you're speaking to the lay public, that's the level of science understanding that they have. And it's very important to be able to explain very clearly what you do and why you do it. As graduate students, you all hear about your elevator speech. I still construct elevator speeches every day for myself because I never know when I'm going to run into a member of Congress, a senior member of the administration. You just never know. I'm always constructing elevator speeches, okay? Because what you will learn is communication, both in terms of how you write and in terms of how you speak, are so incredibly important to a successful academic career. And I guess I would finally say, remember the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, okay? Don't try and dazzle people with your brilliance. Communicate as clearly and as carefully as you can so that anybody will understand what it is that you're speaking about. Because anybody's at the other end of what it is that you're saying or writing.
I see. Thank you for a good advice. I think I should really improve on that skills actually, like communications. So the next question is coming from a dental student, I believe. Do you have to specialize to be a successful clinician scientist?
I will confess, I don't know the landscape in dental schools right now because it's been a while since I've engaged on a regular basis with schools of dentistry. I would defer that question to Dr. D'Souza, who is much more in touch with what's going on in schools of dentistry. In my day, you pretty much had to be a specialist because there was no, outside of performing operative dentistry, there was no general, catch-all department, except in Buffalo, and it was called oral biology, where they threw together a bunch of researchers, and at least during that time period, some real magic happened. My classmates were people like Mark Hertzberg and Mark Patters and Tom Van Dyke and Joe Zambon and Frank Scannapieco. And I mean, we had some pretty amazing, I mean, my colleagues were amazing and all went on to spectacular careers. And, but that was an unusual place. And I don't know if that's been replicated in too many other places, if at all, around the country. So I would definitely ask Dr. D'Souza that question.
Yep, I'll definitely keep this in mind. Yep, thank you. Okay. So I think this is also from a dental student. Can you do both working in a dental office and being an academic and a scientist? Things like product.
Yeah. So far be it for me to say anything is impossible, because it is possible, but it would be very, very challenging. I think most dental schools do have part-time faculty who practice in the community and then come to the school half day or a day a week and teach students dentistry. And perhaps at some schools, as part of that engagement, teaching students dentistry, they may get involved in some research activities. Again, that's a question that you may want to repose to Dr. D'Souza, because I'm just a little out of touch with the ongoings in schools of dentistry these days, and I wouldn't want to mislead anybody. But it's only 24 hours in the day. The community practice of dentistry, of course, is challenging. Your goal, of course, is to deliver the highest quality care to each and every one of your patients. And so, you may have some bandwidth problems, but there are, many talented clinicians who do give back to the profession by teaching, half day, day a week, something like that. I will tell you, when I was a dental student 100 years ago, there were only 4 full-time faculty in the entire school. Everybody else was part-time, had practice, and came to volunteer their time. It was remarkable. Only 4 full-time faculty.
All right, good to know. Thank you very much. This question is, how does your profession as an endodontist help you to conduct the research? Like, does the endodontic training help you to, help you in the research?
To be honest, it's the general training in a clinical discipline that helps, because it teaches you discipline, and it teaches you to work across an interdisciplinary clinical team. I treated my last patient endodontically in 1986, and the world is a better place because of it. What was really important about it at that moment in time for me was I was able to communicate to dental students in a far more effective way if I put things in a clinical context, which I could do with the background of the endodontic training that I had. I was saying the same things, but if I was saying them in a lecture hall about biochemistry, many of the students would just flip the switch and tune me out. But when I was saying the things about, like, antibiotic resistance, on the clinic floor, they were all ears, because I was on the clinical floor, and we had hand pieces in our hands and so forth. So from that vantage point, it was enormously valuable to me. I think that it's the discipline of working with multiple facets of dentistry that was really very valuable.
Yeah.
So James, I'm going to have to like maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then I have to go because I have a meeting with the DepSec of HHS. So
okay,
and I don't want to be late for that.
Oh yes, sorry about that. So we are actually done with all the questions.
Okay.
If it's okay, we can take just 1 more question from the audience. Anybody
Sounds good.
Hand first. If you, then I'll probably doing that. Anybody? And this is
perhaps
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyone?
Maybe I've anesthetized everybody, James. That's part of my endodontic training. Okay. Well, I don't see any takers. So why don't you take your Zoom shot, man, and then I'm gonna have to leave.
Yep, let's do that. So please, everyone, turn on your camera, please.
Let's see if we can break the internet. Let's go.
Yep, and then
oh yeah.
I was told that we should smile also, so let's smile. Okay. All right.
Guys, great meeting everybody. Best of luck to all of you.
Okay. All right.
Okay, James, you got it?
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.